Azalen and his mother stood facing the meadow. It was a March night, and the weather was typical for March, sometimes cold, sometimes warm. This time it happened to be cold. It had snowed yesterday, but in the city it had melted quickly, leaving no trace behind. All that remained of the snow was the chill, and two large blushes spread across his face. Because of the stress coursing through their veins, they couldn't feel the cold. It seemed as though the weather was normal, standard, just like the temperature in their apartment. "Over there?" Mom pointed to one of the distant neighborhoods. "That neighborhood is isolated. Few people know about it. It might be at least a little safer there," she said. As she spoke, a delicate wisp of steam rose into the air right by her lips, then quickly dissipated. "Plus, it's not engulfed in a black cloud of fire like the other housing estates," she added. That was a good sign. Azalen felt Lilka's fur against his hand. After the incident with the window, she had been avoiding Azalen's mother, just in case, and had been staying only on the boy's side, as if she were hoping he would come to her defense again. Lilka's brown fur shimmered with every shade of blue. Azalen looked up. Now he had a moment to see where the blue glow was coming from. The sign of Tumult hung in the sky. So the rumors he'd heard recently weren't just rumors. Tumult had really attacked them. He'd decided to do it, even though many had mocked the idea. "Azalen, when we run into the grass, you have to be really quiet. If you hear anything, if you see anything, don't scream. Hide in the grass," she said to him with concern. "And you too, because I can't vouch for myself," she said to Lilka, much less kindly. Lilka ducked her head and closed the distance between herself and Azalen even further, so she'd be right under his hand. "They might be hiding somewhere," Mom continued. "They can't see us, we can't see them. We have to be really careful." Azalen spotted a moving black silhouette in the distance, nudged Mom, and pointed at it. If it was a Werber, the grass was indeed so thick that even their glowing circles couldn't be seen from a distance. Mom put her finger to her lips and pulled Azalen along behind her. When she grabbed his hand, he could feel every pulsing vein in her palm. They stepped into the grass. Azalen was terrified, and the more afraid he was, the faster his heart beat. It pounded so hard that Azalen felt as though every Werber would hear him. On top of that, his legs were weak with fear, and he was terrified he'd fall. Then, even through the soft ground, they might hear him. Mom moved forward, stopping every now and then to make sure they weren't heading toward any Werbers. She scanned the grass for lights, but the grass was very tall. On the one hand, this made it easier to hide, but on the other, it made searching difficult. When they were halfway there, Mom grabbed him by the shoulder. "Shh," Mom whispered to him, seeing two round lights in the distance. "It's far away. Relax. Don't be afraid," Mom added, gesturing with her hand to show the new route. They turned to make sure they'd pass it by, then set off. They'd only gone a few meters when Azalen felt a sudden tug, followed by claws digging into his arm. Then a gentle brush of fur against his face, followed a moment later by a very strong pull backward. Was it the Werber who had attacked him? It couldn't have covered that distance so quickly. It couldn't have seen them. It was impossible. He was about to scream and call out to Mom that the Werber had attacked him, but after a moment, he realized that it was Mom who, out of fear, had dug her claws into him and stopped him, and then, with force, yet silently, pulled herself and Azalen back into the grass. He looked at his mom in surprise, and she was staring at just one spot, and there was fear in her eyes. He realized that the Werber hadn't attacked him, but they had almost run into the Werber as it was bending down. They hadn't seen its circles because its head was lowered in the tall grass, but it had just lifted it, and from that distance, Azalen saw a white light that flashed in all directions. Werber felt Azalen's face against its belly. It turned around, but there was only grass around him, so it thought it was the grass brushing against it in the wind. It passed by them. Azalen, racked with pain, stared at the black, moving silhouette. It began to move away. Seeing her son's tight-lipped expression as soon as Werber moved, Mom pulled Azalen forward. And then Azalen heard Lilka barking. She was standing a little further away, and Werber had crossed her path. "Not this," Mom groaned nervously, and pulled Azalen with all her might. They started running. In their panic, they no longer cared if they ran into another Werber, as long as they got away from here, as long as they got away from the place where a whole horde of them might gather. Even though they had run quite a distance, Azalen heard Lilka whimpering. "Mom, Lilka," Azalen pleaded. "Hush, Azalen," she silenced him curtly. Lilka was howling in pain. "Mom, Lilka," he managed again in a tearful voice. She didn't answer. Azalen turned to look back at that spot. Werber began to produce a black cloud that hovered over the tall grass, and it almost looked as if that part of the meadow were on fire. Azalen didn't know what to do. He wanted to help her. How could he help her? Mom didn't know how to help her either. She didn't have the strength or the means to save her. Behind the black cloud, Azalen saw a green flash. And then he saw the Duis. A green one, the size of a large car. He fired a shot at Werber. Werber fell. Lilka's whimpering stopped. Werber, irritated, enveloped itself in an even larger black cloud, but the Duis responded by creating a green cloud around itself. Azalen didn't see the rest, because his mom pulled him forward and he had to turn his head away. His heart filled with hope, and now he could run without thinking about turning back. As they ran, Azalen saw that colorful clouds had also appeared over the neighborhoods beyond the black ones. "The Duis are helping us," said Azalen, nervous but also delighted. Mom didn't comment on it, focused on their goal. They managed to reach the distant housing development. They just had to get through the fence, which was quite dangerous, because they had to climb it, and that left them exposed and in plain sight. Mom helped him cling to the fence. "Azalen, be careful when you put your legs through the mesh so you don't get caught," she explained to him. She waited for Azalen to cross to the other side. She didn't rush him, though Azalen felt pressure to get across as quickly as possible. Once he was on the other side, his mom started climbing up too. While waiting for her, Azalen looked around the neighborhood. It was quiet. No one was screaming. There were no dark clouds anywhere. He felt his mom's warm touch on his shoulder. She had just made it to the other side. It seemed safe. "This way," she said, pointing to one of the alleys, the darkest one. "Do you think Lilka ran away?" asked a sad Azalen. "Lilka isn't important right now," she replied dryly. Azalen grew even sadder. His mom sighed when she saw the look on his face. "I'm sure she managed to escape," she corrected herself. "She's clever, you know." She patted him on the shoulder. They headed toward the alley. "It'll be okay," Mom whispered to her son. "This neighborhood seems safer," she added, trying to cheer him up. Her anxiety began to subside, and she was able to offer him her support. As they started to walk out of the dark alley, Azalen gripped his mom's hand tightly. "Mom, there's someone lying there," he whispered. A man was lying in front of them. They approached him. Mom leaned over the man to check on him, and Azalen knelt down beside him. The woman touched the man's shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" she whispered to him. The man's eyes fluttered open. "I don't understand," she said to him, but the man didn't answer. His body slumped as if his muscles had suddenly stopped functioning. The woman nudged him again, hoping he would respond. To no avail. for the sign of Tumult had appeared above the man's head. "No, not here," the woman moaned pleadingly, and covered her face with her hands. Azalen clenched his fists in fear. "So they're here too," said the woman, her face still hidden in her hands. "This was supposed to be safe. And not only are they here, but there aren't even any of those damn Duis. They're in other neighborhoods." Azalen looked away to scan the neighborhood for any colored clouds. No Duis. As he looked at the housing complex, he recognized one of the apartment buildings. It was the complex where Rugi's grandmother lived. "Mom, Rugi's grandmother lives here. Maybe she'll hide us." "If she's alive," the woman replied. Then she corrected herself. "She's definitely alive. That's not what I meant. It's just that apartments, aren't always the best hiding places." The woman's gaze was still fixed on the man, so this time it was Azalen who grabbed his mom's hand and pulled her with all his might, seeing a light emerge from behind the building. They hid behind another wall of the building. Mom covered Azalen's mouth just in case the Werbers' aura reached them and affected them. They watched the light and shadows fall on the buildings and the asphalt. They stood motionless, trying to be silent. Fortunately, after a moment, the Werber left. "Are you happy to be staying with Grandma tonight?" Rugi's mom asked, hugging her daughter. Rugi nodded. "I am, but I'll miss you in the morning," she replied. "I'll miss you in the morning, too," her mom said. "I'll wake up thinking of you, I'm sure of it. You'll have breakfast with Grandma, and we'll be there for dinner. Time will fly by before you know it. Then we can go to the movies if you'd like." Rugi snuggled even closer. Mom kissed her daughter on the forehead. She pulled away to let her daughter hug her father. "We'll pick you up tomorrow afternoon so we can have dinner together," Dad repeated what Mom had said. Before they left, Mom blew her daughter a few kisses. "Maybe we'll watch a movie? The Adventures of Zosha is coming up soon," Grandma suggested. Rugi agreed eagerly. She sat down next to Grandma and covered herself with the blanket. She felt so comfortable that she fell asleep during the movie. A loud crash woke her up. Had her grandmother knocked over a pot while making her some delicious dessert? She opened her eyes and saw her grandmother struggling with a Werber climbing through the window. She tried to close the window, but the Werber was stronger and her grandmother fell to the floor. When it entered, the woman tried to block his path. The Werber shoved her aside with a paw as if she weighed nothing. Her grandmother fell, hitting her head on the tabletop. She lay on the floor, thick blood oozing from her head. Rugi covered her head with the blanket she had been wrapped in, hoping Werber wouldn't see her. She wanted to scream, not only because of Werber's presence, but also because of what she had just seen. The Werber began pacing around the kitchen. She knew that if it entered the living room, the blanket wouldn't help her. Something cracked outside, and the Werber took an interest in it. It jumped back onto the windowsill. Rugi decided this was her chance to escape. She couldn't stay here. She took off the blanket, and as quietly as she could, climbed down from the couch and scurried to the door. She gently grabbed the doorknob and pulled it down. She left the apartment without closing the door. She was afraid that closing it might not work and make a noise. She ran downstairs, down the stairs. When she reached the ground floor, she saw that the main door to the building was open, and a Werber was lurking nearby. So she couldn't go out that way. She turned off the light in the stairwell so she wouldn't be seen, and opened the window. She jumped out through it. She looked around to make sure she was safe. Something made her look up, and when she did, she saw the Werber staring at her. The same one who had been in her grandmother's apartment, the same one who had jumped at the window. She had forgotten that her grandmother's window was on the same side. Werber jumped down. Rugi began backing up, and it kept closing in, until finally Rugi's back hit the wall. She had nowhere to run. Besides, how could she run? It would catch up to her in an instant. Rugi was terrified. The Werber began to be enveloped by a black cloud, and Rugi began to feel a pain she had never felt before. She felt everything and nothing at the same time. Her thoughts were spinning out of control, and she just wanted it all to be over. Finally, a white light began to appear through the black cloud. It emerged from the Werber's mouth and its rings, then struck her straight in the heart. She knew what it meant. She was dying. Pain pierced her entire small body. Azalen looked around the area. "Is it here?" Mom asked. "I think so." He scratched his head. "On that street." "I don't like this place, Azalena. I'd rather we go somewhere else." "What if she has a cool hideout?" "What kind of hideout could an old woman have? A pantry for jars?" "Mom, let's at least check it out. I have a bad feeling about this. I don't like this place," Mom said, but she followed her son. When they turned onto the street where Grandma Rugi was supposed to live, Azalen saw a Werber shrouded in a cloud and a fainting girl pressed against the wall. Her face was wrinkled, her brow furrowed, her skin white as if someone had spilled milk on her. "Mom, that's Rugi!" Azalen shouted, breaking free from his mother's grip. He ran toward his friend, desperate to save her, and the only thing that came to mind was to use that toy he'd found that morning, the one he'd fallen asleep with and kept tucked under his pajamas. That disc. He had nothing else to distract the Werber, and every second counted because the white light was consuming Ruga's life. He threw it at the beast. When the disc touched the Werber's body, it immediately stopped and curled up as if someone had burned it. Then it fled. Azalen hadn't expected such a reaction to a silly toy. The main thing was that it helped. Rugi lay on the ground, half-conscious. "Azalen, that was very foolish," his mother said to him when she ran over. Azalen didn't say a word. He just looked at his barely alive friend. "You'll be okay," he said to Rugi to comfort her. Her body was tense. She was still in pain. "I'll take her," Mom said, lifting the girl into her arms. Azalen took Rugi's hand while Mom held her. He wanted to comfort her that way. "We have to get out of here, Azalen. It's not safe here." "Where will we go?" Azalen asked. "I don't know, sweetheart," Mom replied, then added, "We'll run to the park. It's not far from here. There's a big playground there. We'll hide there and wait until morning." "Do you think they won't find us there?" "They won't," she replied, her voice lacking confidence. "We'll be safe there," she added, even less confidently. The March night was taking its toll. Azalen was very cold. Neither his mom's body nor Rugi's was warming him. Rugi was quite cold herself, and Azalen worried she wouldn't get better. At least it was quiet in the park. There were no screams or moans to torment his mind. They were lying on a huge wooden ship in the middle of the playground. Azalen stared up at the sky and tried to count the stars. He tried not to think about how cold Rugi's body was, not to think about Lilka's whimpering, not to wonder if she had run away or where his friends were now. He wanted it all to end, to wake up in the morning from a bad dream, but deep down, he knew this was a nightmare from which you never wake up.